Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Happy to have each and every one of you back here today, and we've got a wonderful guest today. Super interesting. We've got Elodie Courzadet. Elodie, did I say it right?
You did it perfectly.
All right, cool. Well, let's see if I can get the rest right here. Elodie, you are the Senior Business Development Manager for Vivu Journeys, which is part of the TMG group, right?
That's correct.
All right. Very cool. Those are kind of some of the details that I want to get out of the way. I am familiar with other parts of your story that are super exciting. I want to jump into those, but I wanted to make sure we got the introduction right there for anybody that might be concerned with that. So, Elodie, super excited to have you here. Where are you joining us from? Where are you today?
I'm based in Lyon, France. So not pretty close from you, but pretty close in a way.
All right. Very cool. What is the weather like in Lyon in January? Because that's when we're recording this.
It's freezing now. Super freezing. Well, freezing for me because, as you know, and that's why we're discussing today, I used to be living in Asia for quite some time. So right now in France and in Lyon specifically, it's only 0. Which is super cold for me because I'm still not familiar with the French weather in winter. So 0 degrees today.
Yeah. All right. And you live there in Lyon, correct?
I do live there. I work from there and I travel for work, obviously. But yeah, I'm based in Lyon.
All right. Very cool. I think where we'll start is just give us kind of an idea of what you do for the TMG group. Just kind of a quick overview of what you're doing now, and then we'll go back and discuss kind of what you were doing before and how you got from where you were to where you are now.
So I work for Vivu Journeys firsthand, which is a DMC arm, so DMC for Destination Management Company. So Vivu Journeys is the DMC arm of the TMG group, which is Tien Mien Group. So that's a Vietnamese group where the head office is based in Hanoi. So I'm actually working in a commercial role. So I'm doing all the business development for all the travel agents and tour operators working with us. So I'm actually based in France, but I'm overseeing all the business development for any professional of tourism dealing with DMCs in Asia. And actually not only in Asia because we developed outside Asia. But I'm doing all the face-to-face meeting, trade shows, sales calls, trying to develop the commercial agreement with all those tour operators and travel agents. So I'm doing that for French market, but not only.
Let's dig in, if you don't mind, because I'm sure there are some folks listening to the show today that maybe are not real super familiar with what a DMC is, what the commercial stuff is, and some of that stuff you mentioned. So if you could give some of our listeners just kind of a little bit of an education about what is a DMC, how do DMCs work with tour operators, other tour operators, and, travel agents and that type of thing.
Yeah. So, well, we are doing B2B. So we work only with travel agents and tour operators, and we are at the very end of the chain. So that means all the local operators in destinations are the one actually building the itineraries. So let's say you're a tour operator, Jason, and you want to develop new tours for Vietnam. So we can be in touch. We can discuss about your requirements, about hotels, guides, specific itineraries, experiences, all the backgrounds of what you're looking for. And then we will be there in Vietnam on the ground, making sure we actually tailor all your needs and facilitate that into the itineraries you want us to build for you. And then that's not only it, we also operate on your behalf. So all the tour operators, for instance, selling worldwide destinations, obviously they work with local operators and we work on their behalf, we operate on their behalf with all the requirements for operations, reservation, we make all the reservation for the guides, for the hotel, all the arrangements on the ground are made on their behalf. So that's two things really that we do. So we'll go back to what I did prior because I was on the ground, but now I'm actually the face-to-face with the clients. So my goal is actually to go out, make sure people know about us. Why is it good for you to work with us and not with others? Because we obviously have unique selling points. And I make sure I actually deal with all the negotiation part, the contracts part with tour operators and travel agents. But then it doesn't just stop there. I just want to make sure people understand here that it's not about signing contract off and then disappearing. It's also making sure everything remains up to the standard, making sure you always do trade shows and meetings to make sure that the requirements and the expectations are up to that level. And also develop new things together. If someone is selling Vietnam but obviously want to sell Laos, we can discuss any other requirement on any other destinations and make sure people are happy, We just need to make sure that people are happy on the ground, the end user, and obviously the tour operator is also happy. So I'm making sure all this is made. And so I'm always in between the local teams and also the tour operator. So that's a fine line.
Very cool. I think that was a wonderful description.
I hope that helped.
No, I think that was wonderful. And it's come up in a few conversations that I've had and just really appreciate the way you kind of laid it out there. So basically you're representing the vendor, the supplier that supplies the actual tours, let's say in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And you're connecting them with the buyers who might be a tour operator that's in Michigan or something that offers trips all around the world. One of the trips they offer is Vietnam, but since they don't have boots on the ground and direct relationships with transfer drivers and tour guides and stuff like that, but you do. So you're the kind of the intermediary between the two.
Yeah, and we do inspection as well with the tour operators. So for instance, all the big tour operators just they rely on us because we advise them, but they also come on the ground with us to make sure that the requirements are there. So they always test everything. So we always organize what we call FAM trips, which is a small word for familiarization trips. So every year they want to make sure everything is up to the standard. And sometimes you need to change things, because just to give you an example, Laos is a beautiful destination, but quite difficult in terms of logistics. So sometimes you have to change because there were some floodings, for instance, so the roads have been damaged. So sometimes in the middle of high season, you have to change an itinerary and make sure things are slightly changed. So all those things from one year to another needs to be updated just to make sure it's safe also and people enjoy the trip. But it's not only about selling, it's also making sure that you can actually operate well. So...
No, that makes perfect sense that any, reputable tour operator that's sending people off to different corners of the planet goes and checks them out, both to familiarize themselves with the trip, but also just kind of that quality assurance. It's like a buyer for a big retail chain in the U.S. might travel to China or travel to some other place to actually look at the products, look at the factory, the warehouse, and make sure that their clients are going to be happy with the end product. Of course, what we're discussing is a lot more fun than, I think anyway, a lot more fun than, retail merchandise, that type of stuff. We're actually dealing with experiences here, which I think
quite
are,
fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So now that we have an overview of kind of what you do, how the whole DMC thing works, the business to business here in the tourism space works, let's dig into how you got from where you were, where we can go back as far as you want to go. How did you get from where you were to where you are now? What was that journey like?
It was all so sudden, I sometimes I was thinking about this, and before we did the recording today, I was like, okay, so sometimes I think like I just didn't think about things and just moved from one place to another and just was thinking, so let's just do it. Well, I think I'd like to go back to university because I was studying foreign languages, and part of my bachelor, I had to go abroad for 6 months to do an exchange. And then I came to see my tutor and told him, well, I'd like to go somewhere, but for 1 year, where can I go? And he said like, well, you have two options. Number one is Australia and number two is Canada. So I said, what do I do? He said, well, Australia, there's only one availability, and I think you won't get it because it's hard. I said, so what should I do for Canada then? He said, well, just apply, do this and do that. And then I went to Canada for 1 year. I just didn't really decide about it, but I spent 1 year in Canada. And this is where my connection with Asia started, because my roommate was Japanese. So actually back in the days, because I've been living in Southeast Asia for quite some time, but actually my first real connection with Asia was with Japan. So I was living with her. I didn't know what it was like to be with a Japanese roommate. Well, to be with a roommate anyway, and then in a foreign country. So I really enjoyed, and we became friends, really good friends. And then after uni, she was like, okay, why don't you come see me in Japan? I said, okay. And I didn't really think about Japan as well. I was not against anything, but I was not really up like, what's your dream destination? I was like, well, just go anywhere, really. So after my bachelor degree, she invited me to spend 1 month in Japan, and I knew it cost a fortune. So we've just been to a parents and then an aunt, and then, all these beautiful places in Japan, and that was such a disconnection, right? So I really enjoyed it. And then I came back, I was like, oh, I really love Asia, and I think for a female single at that time, I think that's probably quite safe and that's nice. So well, anyway, I kept something on the side. I was like, oh, Asia is cool. Then I started a master degree. And then for the master degree, I was like, okay, what should I do? Because I don't really want to work. So I did a bachelor in foreign languages, but I actually love traveling. Okay, then I'll do a master degree in tourism industry. All these things just suddenly make sense, but didn't think through that much. So then I did
I'm curious, real quick, Elodie, what languages were you kind of specializing in? You went for bachelor's degree in language. Did you study any Asian languages?
Not at all.
Okay.
I did German and English because, well, to be pretty honest, at school when I was young, just to categorize quickly, and this is not what I think, but sometimes also you have your parents and also the school telling you, oh yeah, you're a good student, you should do German. I don't know why, because nowadays I've been to Central America and I love Spanish, and I think that's so cool, and I actually don't even use a lot of German these days. But at that time I studied German, I was pretty good at it, I did English as well, so that's it. But then thinking back, I could have studied something else. But I also come from a small town, like in France, a middle town. So probably not a lot of options if you want to study a third language or probably Asian language, right? So I
can understand how if you grow up in France, maybe German and English might be the two languages that you would be definitely encouraged to study. That makes sense.
Spanish is quite popular as well. But it was like quite crowded classrooms. So my parents were like, yeah, your brother did German. Why don't you do the same? I was like, okay, well, And I was like, okay, just not always following up on things, but I think, yeah, it makes quite sense. And I maybe some people would think that's silly, but I quite enjoy German language. Mm-hmm. And I think that's quite a smart language to learn. So I really like the way you actually learn the language itself. So I was enjoying it anyway. So I did it. And then I never thought I would be living 10 years of my life in Asia. So I thought probably I would I would be in Paris because, when you finish your studies and you want to go to a big city, probably that's the thing to do. But I've done none of these things, So I've done a master degree and then I was like, okay, master degree in tourism, where can I do that? And I was actually looking for places pretty far away from home. So I used to be in Canada, and when I came back to France, I was like, okay, I need something pretty nice, like nicely ranked, but also pretty far away from home. So this is where I actually ended up in south of France, border with Spain. Mm-hmm. So I did the master degree there, and I had a boyfriend at that time, and he said, well, we need to do a training abroad for 6 months. And I know that, for instance, in Thailand, they can accept couple in a hotel to do the internship together. So we could probably have availability for both and travel there together. I was like, okay, let's do that. So we applied and we got the training in Thailand, and then boom, we go.
Very cool.
So that's it. We spent 6 months in the middle of Thailand, internship in a nice independent hotel, not hotel chain. So we learned a lot from there, from front desk to myself. I was actually accompanying clients on excursions, scuba diving or anything, So we've done many things, pretty remote area, completely transported into a new way of life, barefoot. It was incredible.
Yeah. I'm curious, what part of, just for our listeners that are familiar with Thailand, what part of Thailand was that? You said middle Thailand.
5 hours south of Bangkok, in a Prachuap Khiri Khan area. It's actually the very thin part of Thailand, pretty close to the Burmese border.
Okay.
So
yeah, very, very cool.
It was pretty cool. It was completely remote. And again, I just didn't think about it. I knew I love Asia, but Japan was a different Asia. And I just wanted to go somewhere nice and obviously learn a lot from this internship and then probably have a better idea of what I would do later. And I had an amazing time, but then, I was not going so well with my partner at that time. And then we just finished the study, came back to France, and he was like, so what are you going to do after? And I said, well, why don't we go back abroad? And he's like, oh, no, I want to stay here. I said, okay, maybe we just end this up. So yeah, that's what happened. And then I was looking for a job, naive as I was. I thought after a master degree, without any experience, I would find a nice job in Paris, pretty nicely paid. Not at all. I didn't get any interviews, nothing at all. I work in a campsite in Versailles. Many people were asking me, really? There's a campsite in Versailles? Yes, there is, just so you know. So I worked there for more than 5 months because obviously in Versailles, next to Paris, you have lots of international travelers. So my English was not so bad, my German as well. So obviously it was pretty good for them to get someone with quite good skills in languages. And then they were like, are you interested in getting a long-term contract? I was like, no way. No way. No, I can't do that. I even got a McDonald's recruitment company asking me for a job. And I said, I turned this down as well. I was like, so what am I going to do, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just lost. I have a master degree. I have no experience. Nobody wants to hire me. And then I said, well, I think I should just leave. So then I applied for jobs in Asia. I got a job in India, in New Delhi, and I got one in Thailand. To be honest with you, both salaries were pretty bad. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe the one in Thailand was slightly better, and also maybe better for a woman alone in Thailand. Mm-hmm. So I got the job, and 1 month later, I was there.
Very cool. Very cool. I suspect there's other people maybe that would be listening to this as well. You know, when you talk about, okay, I've got a master's degree and can't get a job, you know, what should I do? So there may be other people that can relate to that. So tell us, what was the job in Thailand? What were you doing there?
The first job, I was just doing quotation on any itinerary, so B2B as well, you know, working with tour operators and travel agents in France. I was doing quotes for individuals or group booking, but mainly individuals, and I was not enjoying it at all. I wanted to get there, and I thought it would be good, but welcome was average. And then I found another job when I was based there because it was obviously easier.
What was it about that job that you disliked?
I think, to be honest, she didn't have much trust in me. Okay. I think that's one thing as well, which obviously is pretty big when you travel and also live abroad. I think, yes, you need to gain trust anywhere you go. And I get that, but you need time for that, right? And the thing is that I lost my grandfather when I just arrived in Thailand, so I actually had to fly back home pretty quickly to go there. And I think after that it got worse because she was thinking, oh, okay, you were away for a week, you just got there, now you need to prove yourself even more. And she gave me lots of work, and I was trying to gain trust, but I don't really think it wouldn't go anywhere. I think it was just, and yeah, I think trust is very key in anything you do, and connection and honesty. That's the way I work, but I didn't see this going anywhere further based on no trust. I think that's pretty hard. So this is where
So you mentioned a couple things there, and I'm curious what the takeaway is for people that are listening to this, because I heard you say trust like 10 times. So obviously that's super important. So let's imagine somebody in a similar situation, they're picking up to travel halfway around the world or around the world to live and work in a different culture in a new job for somebody that they just met. Based on your experience, what kind of advice, what maybe 1, 2, 3 things would you advise to somebody that's doing something like that to help them have a better experience?
Yeah, because it's also beneficial for the other jobs that I got after for other DMCs. Sure. I think you need to prove yourself in a good way. So I think it takes time. And I think it's all related to Asia. So all my experience being with Asia, I don't want to just copy paste it to the whole world. But based on my experience with Asia, I think you need to put yourself in the shoes of the locals. And probably just a cliche of the white man or woman just arriving and pretending you know better. You don't. So that's something very important to highlight. Just arrive in a very humble way, trying to actually utilize what you know to make sure it's actually well utilized in the company you work for, but never overestimate that you know better than the ones you work with. So that's something pretty key, I would say, and probably one of the biggest takeaway. And anything that I've done after that, which was actually being a leader of a team, is also giving the example. Just don't tell people what to do, just do it with them, show them, interact with them, be with them, and just don't be separate from them, because it's all about the connection. And I think when you try to be with people, understand them, and be very humble, especially at the beginnings, I think it's always positive and will always work out for you.
I think that is wonderful advice. And I've worked with people in different cultures and different countries, not a whole lot in Asia. But I can appreciate everything you just said, that just kind of showing up like, okay, I've got a master's degree in tourism and I'm here to, and I'm not suggesting you did that, but I can see how the local operators, your local employers might have some thoughts in their head that that's what's happening. So
probably, yes. But at that time, Jason, I just wanted to get interviews. I didn't even get to that stage, At least you can actually call me and say, you don't know anything, but come see me and maybe we try something out, I would be like, okay, yeah, sure. But then you need to go to that stage first. And then, Asia gave me that possibility, you know?
Yeah, no, that's very cool. And when you said later on when you were leading teams and you learned that you needed to really kind of work with them, not just tell them, hey, here's what you need to do, but work with them and try and understand where they're coming from. Were you leading teams of Asian employees?
Yeah.
Was that is that kind of what you're referencing?
Yeah, I'm referencing to that because after that I gained more experience and I got offered like a position with management. So I think the first team I managed was 6 of them. And then later on I managed up to 12 people. So first one was Thais and I moved to Myanmar. So 12 Burmese ladies, only ladies. Mm-hmm. And then even later when I came back to Bangkok, it was multicultural members. So some of them in Bangkok and some of them elsewhere, which was something else. But you need to show the example, like obviously when I started in Thailand, I did quotes. So my first question, I remember someone of the team of 6, the first team I managed, asked me, okay, yeah, you asked me to do quotes, but do you know how to do quotes? Yeah, good question, because it's very nice. It's good for me to know how to utilize the system, know the difference between this and that. And obviously, if I need to check your file and make sure you've done no mistake in the margins, for instance, it's good for me to know that you put a half-day guide and a full-day guide and anything, So, but some of them would be like, yeah, but do you know how to do a quote? Because, it's nice to just give orders, but at least, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Let's make one together. Today you have 4, and obviously you have some things from yesterday, so why don't I help you with this one? And then we see the result, and we can discuss about it.
Got it.
All these things, and sitting with them, spending time together, and it's spending time together at work, but also sometimes when it's birthdays, when it's Friday, why don't we leave earlier, maybe grab a drink next door, just say have a nice weekend and just be together, It really helps unify the team and make sure you can collaborate even better. So all those things are important.
I love that you shared that from a kind of a management and working with the team leadership type of aspects as they apply to working with an Asian team. And I want to continue on that a little bit, just to maybe like 2 or 3 surprises about Asian culture. So this doesn't necessarily have to do with your experience working there, but just like if somebody hasn't been to Asia, maybe they're getting ready to take a job, and let's maybe just stick with Thai culture if that's more appropriate. I don't know. You tell me. But like, what are 2 or 3 things that surprise people when they show up in Asia to start working or living that that you think our listeners might be interested in hearing?
The most surprising thing, first of all, is about the yes and no scenario, it's not a big no culture. It means like, so it applies to work, but also outside works. So sometimes, I like when people tell me no. It's easier, if you disagree, if you don't want to do something, or if it's just a no, you can tell me. It will be okay. But it doesn't work that way. So sometimes when I discuss several occasions with my Western friends in Thailand, for instance, we always call it the yes, yes, but no.
Okay, so they're inclined to say yes even when they really want to say no. Maybe they even mean no. But they just don't like to say no, it sounds like.
Yeah, but
yes.
they don't really say it. Well, you have some characters, and obviously sometimes you can get pretty close to someone and at the end, but that's not so typical, I would say. So that's different culture, right? Then something which I really love, which is typical to Asia, and I wish I had bring that back to France, but I don't think I can, because it's not up to me, but to the country itself. It's really the culture about living your life today. It's really enjoying every moment, like today is your last day. And I wish I would bring something like that, which is heavy and really nice, to be honest, because I think in Western countries sometimes we struggle with death and life, really. But, like, for instance, every last Friday of the month being payday, you would always see them enjoying it, going out for dinner, for drinks, and it doesn't matter how much you spend, you don't count it, because it's today, Doesn't matter well, obviously some of them would save money, but I would see on many occasions people in the streets just enjoying life as it's your last day, today. And it helped me, to be honest, in many occasions, just to be happy today, and we'll see about tomorrow. We'll figure it out. We'll find a way.
It's very cool. Very in the moment.
Very in the moment, yeah. And that's something I really, really enjoyed. Probably more Buddhist, for sure. So I would say probably two of the big things I can think of right now.
Now, can the living in the moment and not necessarily spending a lot of time worrying about tomorrow, I would imagine, can also make it difficult for a tourism company with a lot of details and a lot of planning and a lot of forward-looking planning. Is that the case, or does it just seem to work out just fine? I mean, is that a challenge?
No, I wouldn't think so. To my experience, yeah, it works quite well. Obviously, you have people in senior position and in team leader position who have this understanding of the business and make sure that things rotate quite well. But yeah, no, I didn't encounter anything that would be an issue on that. It's more of a general way of living. But the way of working, obviously you have differences within Asia, Thai people being different from Burmese, from Vietnamese, from Indonesians. But no, I must say that all the teams I've worked with were super smart, fast-paced workers, loving their job, really passionate about it. So
very cool. So obviously, even working as a DMC, you're, the DMC, like you said earlier, kind of the boots on the ground, the ones that are actually dealing with the clients when they show up. Is it, I don't want to make any assumptions. I'm just going to ask, where did most of your clients come from? And I know you've worked a few different roles and jobs and companies, but In general, are these Western clients?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly, yes.
What I'm sure that you probably could come up with a list of 5 to 10 or 20 or 100 different things that it's just like, wow, these Western clients, just no matter what we tell them, they're always surprised by this, or they always show up missing something, or like, what is just the, like, if you could speak directly to the average client coming from the West to Asia and give them a reality check as far as what to expect or what not to do, what comes to mind? You kind of giggled there, so I'm assuming you've got something.
No, I just had a silly example, which is probably not 100% related to what you wanted to hear, but I was just thinking of because I'm French and I work many, many years for the French market. Not only now, so I have many more experiences on other markets, but I would always remember them saying, oh, they're so nice, but that's a shame they don't speak French. You know? Like, yeah, but, you know.
No, that makes, that reminds me, that's kind of like stories like, oh, the destination was wonderful, but it was really hard to get a cheeseburger or a pizza. You know, is that like...
I get that all the time. Yeah. And about rice, we love rice, but at some point we would love much more diversification. It's always about rice. Well, yeah, sure. And if you come to France, you always have a baguette as well. So, but yeah, no, just a reminder of the heat. Obviously, people tend to forget, about humidity and the heat and mosquitoes. So trying to make them understand and remember that you come to tropical countries. So inside, there's a lot of aircon. So make sure you have something to carry your shoulder. And not only about inside, but also when you visit temples, it's common sense, obviously, but it's good to remind people that they need to have their shoulders and knees covered. So that's always something we remind them. Also reminding them about the spices, that's different food. So make sure you bring some things in case you're sick. Ice cubes, all these things that you're probably not always familiar with, and you can get sick quite easily.
Interesting. As you were mentioning a few of those things, one being air conditioning.
Yeah.
I think you could probably bring a lot of value to this conversation, or maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong, but I want to go here anyway. What should travelers know about French culture to help them understand other French travelers? Because most people that have traveled around the world at all have run into travelers from France. And I think sometimes other cultures have a hard time understanding French travelers.
You think so? Well, yeah, I'm comfortable with anything.
All right. So
that's you too?
I'm curious if you sense that, if you picked up on that. And maybe it's just me. Maybe people listen to this or Jason, I have no idea what you're talking about. Or some people might. And I think French people are super interesting when I run into them. But there seems to be, maybe, I'm just curious, are there a few things that people should know about French travelers to help them understand?
As a French...
Or tour operators. What should tour operators know about French culture? Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Well... French travelers firsthand, they don't really speak well foreign languages. So I think sometimes that's one of the things when you meet French travelers abroad and there's no interaction, it's probably also something that probably they stay together and they don't interact much because also they don't really speak super well the language. So they kind of protect themselves, I would say. I'm not like that because I lived abroad many years and I can speak and I can socialize because I speak okay. But all my family members, for instance, they want to travel. But when they travel with groups. And when they travel with groups, they stay with the group because that's safer because they don't know how to interact with the locals. So that's one way to put things forward. Then in terms of French travelers, one thing that I always love is that you always need to exceed expectations and always look for new places, because when working with other markets, some of them might be comfortable going to very mass places where the French people always want to go where there's no one. So that's always nice as a professional of tourism, and depending on which segment you work on, let's put it that way. If you work in Vietnam with adventure tour operator in France, obviously they want to go remote, but they want to go super remote, very local guest houses, local experiences. It's not about, well, sometimes wow someone is not about the price. It's also about where you can make sure you will have no one else. So that's one of the things they always ask us, and we always need to go forward with that. It can be with adventure, but also with 3-star average classical round trips, or it could be immersive 5-star tour operator doing luxury. Anything you do, you always have in mind that they want something else.
Do you think that those two things are related? Because I heard you say before, when we were speaking about language, I heard you say kind of a little bit of isolation, stick to themselves, maybe don't mingle as much with the people around them. And then the second point you brought up was they like to be where there's nobody else, or there's, more remote, more, smaller operations.
They want to mingle, but they want to mingle with the locals, So they want to mingle. I don't say they don't want to mingle with other tourists. They might be okay with that, but honestly, when they travel abroad, I think the priority would always be on local immersion with the locals. And that's something that can be facilitated with the tour guides, because if they don't speak well, and that's something that we do, with the TMG group and the DMC I work for, is that we're specialized into immersive experiences, and we make sure we can actually bring any type, any segments into a very local immersive experience. So it doesn't bother if you don't speak the language, as long as you have this connection. So, you stay away from the crowds, but you go back home, and actually it's not only about the product itself. The product, let's say, as hotel. Hotel is part of the trip, but it's not always essential to that. It depends on markets, it depends on tour operators, it depends on, what you'll be looking for. But for French market as a whole, I would say if there was something that would define them, would probably be that.
That's really interesting. I appreciate you sharing all that, because pretty much everything you mentioned aligns with experiences I've had. And I love France. I've spent time in France. It's been a long time ago. And I've met some fabulous French people in my travels. And I've recognized some of what you've described. I've worked in tourism and hospitality for most of my life. And your insights that you just gave kind of explain why maybe there's the French couple at the lodge. They're the only French folks at the lodge, and they maybe seem a little bit more kind of isolated, where everybody else is sitting up at the main lodge drinking and sharing stories, and maybe the French couple is spending a little bit more time off in their room, or they stay out on the tour a little longer than everybody else. And so that's very, very helpful. So thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
That's my experience, and probably many definitions depending, local connections and cultures are super difficult to analyze, Even now, being back to France after several years in Asia, I'm always amazed by also the regional differences. And I know in the US it's the same, it's even bigger, or anywhere anyway. When I'm in Paris meeting clients and then I go to Marseille, it's a complete different story,
Oh, yeah. There's so much variety and variation. And I was just curious because I recognize what I'm discussing is a little bit of a stereotypical thing, but I've got an opportunity to speak with a French person that works in the travel business catering to French people. So I'm going to ask those questions. So thank you for indulging me with that. So how long have you been? You've been back in France? How long?
I came back just before COVID.
Okay. Do you think that was good timing for you, or do you wish the timing had been a little different?
No, it was good timings. I must say I have no regrets in life. I did my time. My last experience in Asia was amazing. So I was already working with the TMG group. And then I told them I wanted to take some time off. So actually in 2019, I spent 9 months just traveling around for me, no job. Mm-hmm. And then they contacted me for another project, which I started with them back in January 2020. So I went to my favorite places and new places in Asia in 2019. I spent summer in Europe, and then I traveled to Central America, something I discovered I didn't do before. So I really loved it. Spent Christmas with my family and started this new job right before the pandemic. And it all went well, and I'm still working there. And I'm actually enjoying being closer to home now because I wanted to change few things in my life and just experience other things outside Asia. But the beauty is that I'm actually close to home, but I'm actually every day in Asia with with the company I work for. So that's why it's pretty fantastic for me. I think it would have been difficult being back to France and actually working for a French company with 100% French culture, which is something I never experienced. So it works perfectly for me.
It does sound like, as someone that I feel like you and I probably resonate in a lot of different ways, it seems like a pretty perfect fit that you still get to stay connected with the wonderful, exciting life that you had in Asia, and you get to be in France and doing what you want to do there. I'm just, because you started up with them again right before COVID, so let's go there. What was the biggest struggle, biggest aha, biggest change that you saw through COVID, and what came out of it? What is your kind of take on what happened there? Not everything, but
you mean personally,
as far as tourism in Southeast Asia, I guess. I don't know. What are your takeaways?
Obviously, big struggle with COVID. Well, luckily, I work for a group that owns hotels and cruises and different assets, including the DMC part. Luckily for us as well, we had Europe operations throughout the pandemic. So while we could not operate in Asia, we could do operations in Europe. But we are a Vietnamese group. And I must say, after the pandemic, and that's something that I do always appreciate with Asia, is actually how strong they are, you know. They can do anything, you know. They have this frame of mind that, okay, let's just restart things, let's do things all over, let's just make sure we are even better. So within the group and Asia as a whole, I mean Southeast Asia, I think the post-pandemic has been quite successful, to be honest, you know. We're hiring. Is
it busier now than it was before?
Busier, no, because, for instance, in Vietnam, you have like the Chinese market, for instance, and the Russian market not there. But in terms of Western markets, it's actually growing again. I think the first year after COVID, we also had the struggles about the flights. So that's not something the DMC is handling, but obviously you would not have all the rotations for the flights. So many people would be willing to go to Asia, but actually would have no seats available sometimes. Mm-hmm. So that was a struggle, you know, because people willing to go, but you have only like, let's say, 3 rotations a week with Vietnam Airlines. And before you used to have once a day. So you need to make sure all those rotations go back. and then you can actually grow the business. But from the DMC part, that was a struggle on year one. But then I would say probably the struggle is gone, really.
Okay. I was going to ask that because it's January 2024 when we're recording this.
Yeah.
Is there any residual issues or impacts from COVID that would impact a Western traveler traveling to Southeast Asia right now? Or is it like back in business like normal? Is there any reason to postpone and wait? Or should they get going now?
No reason to postpone. I think one of the things we did, obviously, on the ground post-COVID is to make sure that, all the business run. Some people actually did something else. The tour guides got other jobs. Some hotels just closed the door. So will this reopen? Making sure that it's up to the standards as well. So we're all about the local experiences. And obviously, we would always push people to have local experience in local areas and so on. But we also need to make sure, as I said earlier, that they are safe and they're enjoying it. So it has to have a little like the standards in terms of safety. So we're very big on health and safety requirements. So we do all the checks, hotel checks, VI calls, all the logistics, need to make sure it's safer because you operate on the behalf of the tour operators and insurance is a big thing. So while at the very early stage, we would be making sure everything runs smooth, and we are at that level now that we can fully say, yeah, for sure, you can travel. It's, Vietnam is one of the big radar, like Japan is very big destination this year, but Vietnam also quite big. Southeast Asia is safe. Southeast Asia has lots of infrastructures. It's always quite big, and I think it's going to be even bigger this year and the next one. So there's nothing to worry about and no need to postpone any trip to Asia for sure.
Very cool. Why don't you give our listeners one or two just exciting experiences that you're excited about? And I'm not going to ask, it's hard to say, well, what's your favorite trip, favorite place? Because I know there's so many variables.
I can't say that.
I know. And I want to get somebody that's listening to this to get excited about
but
a particular something.
I can say that, but just so you know, before, I always separate countries where I lived in than countries that I traveled to. Because obviously, I love Thailand, I love Myanmar. Okay, so let's choose some of those. Vietnam. I think Halong Bay is something that people need to experience. And with the TMG group, we are the only seaplane operator. So I think one of the magical experiences to do in Vietnam is actually Halong Bay, but not from a boat. Well, you can do it. It's still super cool, but actually from the sky is something that needs to be done. Another thing which I really love is Inle Lake in Myanmar. It's just going by a boat through the floating villages and just mingling with the local, stopping by for a tea, seeing the fishermen around, and it's just a wow atmosphere where I could choose so many places in Myanmar. It's an incredible destination, and just as an FYI, I hope any trip would restart soon and based on the current situation. But Inle Lake is definitely something wow to go to. And one of
you said based on the current situation. So what is the current situation for those that don't know?
Well, I was living there in 2015, and it was pretty big at that time. I mean, it was pretty open country, but that's a military junta, and many things happened. So there were several conflicts, and internationally, it's not been recommended for several years to actually travel there. It's not that safe now. So that's why many tour operators and travel agents still have it on their brochure, because it's an amazing destination, and for Asian lovers, that's a must-do. I was lucky enough to live there and travel there. But for now, many people refrain from traveling there for obvious reasons. You know, you have like a genocide with the Bangladesh border. You have many things involved with the military. And internationally, it's not recommended to travel there. So I just hope, because I love Burmese people as well, and I had amazing times there, I just hope that things will get better as worldwide, because we live in a silly world these days, but I just hope things will go better and we can travel there again in a safe way, because safety is a priority, not only as a professional, but also personally. Safety is really big when you travel. So in Lele.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
And then the last thing probably would be, I just came back from Japan. I did meditation. So I started doing Zazen meditation. So I did that in central part of Japan, Honshu, which is the main island. I was on the very west coast next to Fukui. And I was in the mountains doing meditation, and I started at 4 a.m. with about 50 monks. And that's something that I will never forget.
That's very cool. How long was that trip?
Just the meditation was 2 days, but my trip was 11 days. And that's something really cool I wanted to do for quite some time. And I actually just started meditation in Lyon. Right next to my apartment, there's a dojo. And I just started Zazen meditation. So it's funny because sometimes you do things in life and then it just goes naturally, you know, this circle of life. So anything that I did really in my life was like that. So I just did this meditation and I come back and I see there's a dojo next door and I can actually do the exact same type of meditation every day if I want, just 3 minutes away from home.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. And that's one cool thing about travel is, you know, it opens us up to all these things that sometimes are right next door, you know, but we have to go all the way around the world in order to experience it.
Sometimes,
and I can't tell you how many times I've found something. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I've never seen this before. And then I go on to the next country or I go back to the States and, oh my gosh, it's right here in the States. I just never saw it.
Right.
You know, an example would be like pupusas, you know, in Ecuador. Pupusas just this cool little like corn pancake thing. And when I was traveling in Central America, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And now I've, you know, back in Arizona visiting my son for Christmas, driving down the road and there's a sign saying pupusas, you know, and you could stop it.
Like, oh my God.
Pupusas. It's so travel's pretty fun. It really kind of connects you with, or for me anyway, it connects me with the world. So sounds like you've had an opportunity to see and do some wonderful things. And what's great is you're helping people do that every day by connecting the DMCs with these different tour operators and travel agents.
One of the things I just wanted to add, because you asked post-COVID, and I think the need for connection was big before, but I think the need for connection is even more needed now after COVID. I see that personally, but I see that as well professionally, you know. People need to connect with each other, spend some real time together, and they always get these things back to their home, you know. I know that, for instance, when we build super nice itineraries, it's not always about the price, it's not about the hotel, but sometimes it's about the experiences we create with the locals they meet. We have a product range which is called local legends, and the local legends are the superstars. We actually meet in destinations. We discuss with them. Our product teams discuss with them, and they tell a story. You know, they have a very special story to tell, and you can spend a half day, a full day with them, and you go really deep down into their story, and you exchange about it. And I must tell you that the travelers, when they go back home, that's all they speak about.
Yeah. I think, and I know for me, and I'm starting to believe for most people, if not almost everybody, travel is about connection. The mountains are beautiful. The beaches are beautiful. The rivers, there's so many beautiful things out there that we see. We see a lot of photos on Instagram and, oh, look at all these amazing places out there. But ultimately, it's the connections we create when we travel that really are meaningful. And whether that's with locals that we meet, or maybe it's with family members that we're traveling with, or maybe it's strangers that are also traveling that just happen to be in the same place. And it's all about the connections, because I would not, I want to go to Morocco. Morocco's on my list.
Yeah.
But if you told me I had to go to Morocco and I was going to be in Morocco for a week and I couldn't talk to anybody, I'd be, what's the point?
No point.
There's absolutely no point if I can't talk to people. Obviously, I'm into talking to people, and that's why I'm doing a podcast. But it's, I think it's about the connections. And even sometimes when someone climbs a mountain, goes out and goes wingsuiting or whatever they're doing, maybe it's a connection with themselves even. I think that's important as well. So I'm happy you brought that up. And really, that's what the whole big world made small thing is about.
Yeah, I was about to say about it.
It's not about geography.
Yeah, your podcast is about the connections.
So thank you. I'm happy you brought that up. Elodie, this amazing conversation. And I'm curious, I'm sure there's something I should have asked. You brought up so many great things. Is there anything I forgot to ask, should have asked, anything you want to make sure our listeners hear before we wrap it up?
Well, if any tour operators, travel agents, or any professional of tourism is interested about hearing more about us, work for the TMG group, which is Tien Minh Group, Vietnamese group, and Vivu Journeys DMC. We do local experiences. We are a product-led DMC at Vivu Journeys, and the group owns an amazing range of hotels and cruises in Vietnam. So any information, you can always find me on LinkedIn. But obviously, I wish everyone to know more about Asia culture, to travel to Southeast Asia, and make local connections.
Very cool. And for anyone that's listening to this that doesn't have the pleasure of seeing Elodie's face, you clearly care about what you're doing. I can see it on your face. I can see the smile when you talk about Asia and connecting. So I would encourage anybody that's listening to this that works in tourism, travel agent, and even if they just want to go to Asia and they're not a travel agent, maybe still look at the website. It's gonna be linked. And I'm sure that if somebody did reach out to you, I'm sure you could connect them with a partner that could take care of them. So we will have your website link in the show notes. And I look forward to working with you on future projects. And next time I go back to, actually, this whole podcast started in Southeast Asia. I went to Southeast Asia for the first time this past year. And it was kind of this moment of, oh, wow, it always seemed so far away. And I'm not going to lie, the flight felt like it was far away.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
And when I got there, it felt like it wasn't so far away. And it was like, oh, okay, I'm in Bangkok, I'm in Bali. And you know what? The people here are different and are much more alike than they are different. And I just felt this connection that it was like, wow, I want everybody to be able to do that. I worked in the travel business most of my life. I was 49 years old before I went to Southeast Asia. And that's a big part of why I started this podcast is I just want people to just go out there and experience these things and realize that the world's not that effing big. So, Elodie, thank you for being part of that. Appreciate that.
See you in Asia, Jason.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Ellie. Appreciate you. And I will chat with you again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye. I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.